Hello and welcome to week 10, everyone, of the Gatecrashers devlog. As you can see, we're trying something a little bit different this week. Hopefully, this can be the system that we use going forward for devlogs. So, I've noticed I have a tendency to ramble. This, hopefully, is a way to organize my thoughts for the devlog and also to allow viewers to skip around, right, to the parts that they are interested in. So I have 2 to 3 minutes to talk on each of these topics, and that's it, because we want to get these videos down to about 15 minutes or so. Okay, so with that, let's go and talk about our first feature, which is the changes to the Minimap UI and the encounter warning system. So as you can see that the Minimap is now up on the top right corner. This we've tried many different positions. This seems to be where there seems to be the least amount of tension, and also prevents the player from playing the minimap as opposed to engaging with the rest of the level. The minimap around it has a border that depending on its color indicates the proximity to the next random encounter. So if it is green, that means there is no chance of taking random encounters. You can still take spike tile encounter in such a situation. If it is white, that means encounters are possible, but they are still a ways away. If it's yellow, that means within the next 10 steps there might be an encounter. And if it's red, it means within the next 2 steps there is going to be an encounter. If you move between regions, so you'll notice at the start of each floor, we kind of don't want you to take any encounters. The encounter steps are saved between them, right? And with the next item that I kind of want to talk about, we have made random encounters a much bigger consideration in the long-term dungeon crawling as well. So we've implemented something called region count. Now a pretty familiar strategy that many people playing RPGs are familiar with is if you get to a place where enemies are easy and they're not too costly for your party, you can kind of just sit there forever and kind of farm for experience. I don't really consider this to be a bad thing if the players are having fun leveling their party up to 99 before they continue on with the rest of the game. However, in our game, while sort of accumulating experience isn't that much of a big issue, we do want to push them along the exploration of the dungeon. And the way that we do that is with the resources that you get. You need to keep running into new monsters in order to get new junk, right, in order to sell, right, and sort of fuel that research economy. So the way that we do that is with this region count system, which is a hidden number, where we count the total number of encounters in a region, and once they're exhausted, that area is safe, and so you can move through it without taking an encounter, but you also cannot take encounters until you switch floors, right? To make things interesting on top of that, no 2 troop IDs, right, come repeat, right, when we generate the encounter. We have a large pool of encounters, but players sometimes the feeling of staleness comes in, right, when they see the same troop again and again. The artificiality of the system becomes much more apparent, and so hopefully by doing this, that they'll be sort of less inclined to run into that. Okay, let's talk about the status window. So as you've noticed, the status window has changed. It is bigger. It is a lot more detailed. You can see the actors' faces now. And not only that, but you may have seen, hopefully if I've queued the footage up, that you can switch modes between a mode that can show the equip slots of the actor and also what their level is, what their needed experience is, and how far along that track they are. This is really cool because not only can you switch between the modes, but the actors are now selectable, which means that you can do some quality of life with the interactions that you just want to take place out on the field. So if you run into any equipment out on the field, rather than using the choice menu, you can just select the actor from the menu, from the status window, right, and give them their respective bit of equipment. With showing the level, we're not doing this on the main menu, but we will, which will require some moving around of things in the main menu. But with showing the level, I took the showing of negative So minus XP, that is the amount of XP needed for your next level. That's actually from Crystal Project, which use this as a way to sort of indicate, right, that like this is what's required before your next level. And I found that like a pretty effective way of communicating that. So yeah, this is a huge, big UI advancement, and hopefully something that we can continue building upon, right, and make both the information and the usability of it easier for users, right, with the way the status window is growing. Okay, this is the big one for this update. So you may have noticed enemies show up in groups now. They show up in groups of 3, 4, 5, and as you defeat them within the group, those enemies drop off one by one. And for a very special enemy, the Recycler Swarm, though they can summon reinforcements, and they essentially do that to their group, right? Thereby sort of growing in size if you leave them kind of unchecked. Enemy groups sort of enables us to do a lot of things, but the biggest thing it does is it allows us to like make things a little bit more visually coherent, right? We only really need to have 3 kind of columns of enemies, right? And then the rest of it can be handled within groups. With items like grenades, they target an entire group, right? And so that's how you can get additional utility, right, from some of your like area of effect kind of skills. I considered trying to put the enemies within a row system, which is typical of this genre, but I think like this bit of asymmetry I'm kind of fine with, right? Where like I care about rows for the players, but for enemies, like if you're running into like 15 of them, right, and I want to show them, I don't really want you to have to deal with like row column stuff, right? Rather, you just handle them in a group. This took a lot to set up because the way that we're doing it is we're sort of transforming the enemy, right, once they hit certain HP thresholds. But when you defeat them, you need the right amount of XP and the right amount of loot rolled based on the number of enemies that you defeated. This RPG Maker fought me at pretty much every step, right? So I had to go in and like learn how JavaScript's reduce works and all that sort of stuff. But we were able to get it to work, and I think it has been largely successful, right, in making fights feel a little bit more dynamic. However, there's a big drawback that I didn't foresee when implementing this, which is that groups kind of work against one of the core mechanics of our game, which is shields. So how do we handle shields on a group of enemies, right? Well, the simple answer would be just adding up all of their shields. However, if there are abilities that care about whether you're shielded versus whether you're not shielded, right, then for enemies later in the game, right, you're having to chew through 1,000 points of shield, right, before you can even get at their health. So there's a sort of like short rule, which is that enemies with shields will largely not be part of groups, right, or will be part of like kind of controlled groups. And I think so we'll reserve this group mechanic for swarm type enemies, right, which typically won't have shields. So we'll see how we develop this as we go further, but it's been kind of a huge success. All right, let's talk about field skills. So field skills have been implemented in this build, finally. So we have Grunts Safeguard, which protects you against hazards. It grants you Aegis, which is sort of a one-time nullification, right, of a negative effect that's put on you. We have Sneak's Camouflage, which in theory, well, it avoids encounters and it avoids enemy detection. And if you were to get into an encounter, then you start out with stealth, right, which enables you to either deal a crit or get a guaranteed evade, right, on a physical attack. And last but not least, we have Scion with Accents, which broadens their field, right, on the minimap, so you're able to see up to 4 tiles away as opposed to 2, and also grants you Channel, which discounts your first skill use. And so this would be, for example, if you're using energy, it sort of waives that cost, but it also makes sure that like your first skill doesn't have a cooldown. So it's useful for both grunts and science. It turns out that field skills are a little bit broken, so you can only activate one of them at a time. but they only last about 30 steps, so it is still worth it to run redundant members of one class if you want to have access to the field skills at all times. Okay, so another big implementation that was made is dual-wielding bonuses are in. Dual-wielding works sort of as it was sort of envisioned, where if you have two of the same type of weapon, it actually changes the skill that you use to do your regular attacks. And if there's any skills that are associated, with the weapon, then you get an additional hit on any of those skills. So dual wielding is possible with both melee weapons and ranged weapons. With melee weapons, it's working exactly as intended. With ranged weapons, it's working until you go to reload, and that's when all kinds of shenanigans break out. Because all kinds of considerations have to be made with what guns are loaded, what guns are unloaded. If you are dual wielding and then you remove a gun and then you put another ranged weapon, what happens? That's all kinds of fun, like back end stuff that I need to deal with. It did bring a fun idea as I was implementing it, which was that what if, based on the current interaction with dual wielding and like these one-shot weapons, what if this Gatecrashers, instead of being in sort of this kind of like horror sci-fi kind of setting, was in like an Age of Sail, right? Like a Treasure Planet, Rogue Galaxy type of like space opera, where like, yeah, you still have sort of these one-shot like pistols that you have tucked away in your coat, and you bring them out, shoot them once. Anyway, I had a lot of fun imagining that, but it's a pretty different direction than what we want to go with. But yeah, dual wielding is in. It's also helped with differentiating the classes, which I'll get into in the next section. But expect the ranged weapons bugs to be fixed by next week, and yeah, for it to be a powerful part of your arsenal. Okay, last but not least, so we've made some changes to class progression that I think have broadly helped, right, in differentiating the classes, right, and also onboarding us to what they can do slower. So I noticed that you have the different classes, but when it comes to gear choices, because of how open gear is, right, you tend to just gravitate towards the best stuff for each slot. And maybe there's certain classes that prefer, right, like one type of item over another, but if we unlock the slots evenly across the classes, then there's no incentive to go for one or the other. So what I ended up doing is, instead of unlocking both an offense and defense slot for all of the classes when you promote, instead for Grunt I unlock a defense slot, for Sneak I unlock an offense slot, for Cyan I unlock a mod slot. And what this already creates differences where Grunts are just more defensive, right, than the other classes, because they have that additional slot to put things into. Sneaks immediately are able to access dual wielding, where the other classes are not able to. And Scions, right, are able to gain access to mods that allow them to manipulate their stats, right, which can allow them to do all kinds of cool things. The first mod you get is something that boosts your max energy, right? So they can be much more dependent on their skills because they're not getting as much out of their gear than the other classes. So we'll see how this pans out, but I think it's been a generally positive change. The other big change has been that skill points are being distributed every other level as opposed to every level, which I think has just helped make skills sort of stand out and not get overshadowed by each other a little bit more. Okay, so yeah, that brings us to the end of this. Hopefully this new format works for all of you. This month I have a playtest at the end of it with some friends. So wish me luck, but that'll be sort of the bulk of the work that we want to do for this build. So yeah, see you next week.